So I thought I would just pop on here briefly to talk about some of the drama / horseshit that was started by Jeremiah Talks, or whatever the name is on Twitter. Harding, or Jeremy Harding, or Jeremiah Harding, whatever the he went on his YouTube channel last night, did a stream with some people. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. He had put out some private communications on Twitter yesterday. I thought I would basically just talk about this all in context and talk a little bit about myself, since he doesn't know anything about me and the people who were on his show don't know anything about me. And I don't think they know much about the Tower Gang people, who they also decided to talk about. So I think it's a good time to sort of talk a bit about my upbringing, where I came from. Some of you guys will already know this stuff, some of you won't, but figure we'll cover it here just to be safe. First off, one of the issues that Jeremy took up is, of course, the age-old problem of the Tower Gang and people like Outlawed Thoughts make statements that are bad, and they're libertarians, and they're involved in libertarian politics, and blah, 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 blah. The same horse shit that I've heard over and over and over again. It wasn't true then, it's not true now. The reality is that I have the opinions that I have in politics, and I do the action that I do in politics, and I have a show. That show happens to be a creative endeavor that I created about 1.5 years ago at this point, after already being involved in the liberty movement for 3 years at that point. Before I ever had a show, I went to Young Americans for Liberty, I went to a few conventions, I went to Florida Freedom Fest the first year they had that. I've been all over the U.S. going to libertarian events for, I guess, really about 3.5, 4 years. Much longer than I've had the show. The show was really created, Outlawed Thoughts that is, as a place for me to just voice my opinion about random stuff, and really to make jokes. I grew up in a family with 4 brothers, 1 older, 3 younger. We lived in a 500 square foot cabin, and we had 7 people in the house, in a 1-room cabin with wood heat. I grew up in a very tough lifestyle, and I grew up in a much different, much less sheltered lifestyle than I suspect most of the libertarians did. Now, that's not to say I know something they don't, or I have something they don't. That's not the case. Rather, that you just sort of grow up a bit differently, and you also learn a bit different of social cues. For instance, I wouldn't go on Twitter and call another man a coward behind a keyboard. Now, there's a number of reasons for that, but the major one is that I was raised to never call another man a coward unless you planned on fighting that individual. I also grew up never having stepped foot in a public school and never stepping foot in a college. I had a grandmother who had a degree in religious studies and history, and so I've spent basically the entirety of the first 15 years of my life spending every breathing minute I had not working on something on our property, reading books, and researching history and politics. Those were the 2 things that became interesting to me. Now, later on, I got very interested in economics, and that shifted some stuff around in my belief structure. That was maybe 3 years ago, and that's when I got sort of involved with the libertarian / ANCAP / everything movement, the liberty movement in general. What really pushed me to get involved with that stuff was actually economics. Otherwise, I probably would have fell more on the agorist scale, which is where I think a lot of Alaskans are at. But when people today ask me what I am, I typically don't say ANCAP, and I haven't said that for a while. Typically, what I have been saying recently is that I'm an Alaskan nationalist, and there's a few different reasons for this that I'm going to be covering in the Joe Vogler documentary I've been working on for a number of years now. So that brings you up to speed of why I have the opinions I have, where I came from, some of that stuff. I have the sense of humor that I have because I grew up with 4 brothers and a father who was extremely sarcastic, and he had friends from just about every ethnicity who would come around our place and would make jokes about the groups of people that they hung around, and then on top of that, we were a Jewish household, and so we constantly made Jewish jokes. That was just something that you did. And so I've always had a very dark sense of humor, and really everybody in my family does. There's not a single brother that I have that doesn't have very much a similar sense of humor to me. So, when I started a show about a year and a half ago, I branded the show as exactly that, a show talking about politics and news and ranting about stuff, but that it was going to have constant sarcasm and humor, just like I grew up, just like I was used to, and frankly, I think I've done a pretty good job of it. I've kept a decent little core fan base around that seems to enjoy the shows, and I've even got to step outside that realm, by doing some shows that revolve around pop culture stuff. I've been covering the Eric July drama, covering some other topics that I find very interesting, and that happen to bring in some views, which has been great for the channel. We're about to hit 70,000 views in total here on the channel, and that's been great. I did some videos on politics. I covered the Brandon Herrera thing. That video got a little over 4,000 views. And some other stuff, mostly just using my editing skills and some other things that I picked up over the years of making content for other people. But the reality here is that this guy wanted to start drama, and he went up onto Twitter and he published private DMs of me trying to figure out a way to set this show up, and really the reason the show didn't happen is for a few different reasons. Primarily the fact that the first time I had this individual on, I actually kicked him off the show, and that was because he was yelling over people and just being argumentative in general where it didn't need to happen, and that wasn't really the type of show I've been running, and so I decided to boot him off the show at that point. Now, after I had somebody ask me to have him back on, some talks happened. We decided to have this episode where we talked about Javier Milei's election, sort of a round table of sorts, people from different opinions on all sides. During that discussion, there was more yelling, more of the same stuff. It wasn't a very enjoyable show, and afterwards, there were comments and people who reached out to me on Twitter sort of saying the same thing. This was dog shit. And typically I try to make the shows enjoyable for the audiences, right? Views aren't the most important thing, but typically it's a good way of gauging whether or not what you're making is actually good, whether it's edited properly, whether it flows well, whether people are even interested in what's being said. In the case of that podcast, it had really bad drop-off and stuff. And there's been some people who asked me why that episode is down, and the reason that episode talking about Milei was taken down was because of one of the individuals in the call. One of the people who had joined via a group chat that the link to the stream was put into was a person who's since been charged with some crimes, and I didn't want to put the whole thing out. I don't have the charging docs and stuff in front of me, but they were charged with crimes that involved minors, and so you can obviously sort of assert what I'm saying there, and so I decided, because this stream had that person's @ in it, and it had their Twitter handles and stuff, to pull that stream down. But I did that a month and a half ago at this point. It was done quite a while ago, or a month ago. Whenever that had come out was when I had pulled that episode down. And so, I did plan on doing a second part to the Milei episode, but the big issue was finding a panel. I wanted to have like 4 to 8 people on, and finding people, scheduling, all that was just a mess. I wasn't going to have just Jeremiah, me, and Kareem on to have that discussion, because I don't think it would be useful, and I think the content would suck. Not to mention, I just don't think the discussion would be very good. Jeremiah didn't like the fact that I ghosted him on Twitter. Get in line. There's like 30 other people that are going to be angry about the same thing. Eventually, I will get to them, and I understand that it's a problem. Maybe those people won't want to talk to me at some point. So be it. But Jeremiah took issue with this, went to Twitter. He puts up all this shit. He puts up private communications. He calls me a coward. Then he does the live stream where he talks about myself. He talks about the Tower Gang people pretty extensively. He brought on a gaggle of other completely stable-seeming individuals. And just, I'll put those people up on screen here, because when these are the type of people who are critiquing you, I'm not very worried. I do not know Hody, or Hottie, or however you pronounce his name. I don't think we've ever met. If we had, I don't remember it. The Rose woman was one of the people who popped into my chat, referring to the people who were on the call and myself as bitches. So she didn't get a very warm welcome. It is what it is. I don't know you, and I assume you don't know me. The Uncle Mike or Bobby or whatever that person is in the call, I don't know them either. I also assume they don't know me. But they sound completely delusional. Now, Kareem is my co-host, and so I think there were probably some people who were a bit weirded out to see him on a stream like this, but the reality is Kareem can do what he wants. He's just a co-host of the show. Now, he's been a co-host for about a year now on the show, or a little over a year. So for people like Jeremiah to be putting forward in this stream that I don't respect Kareem, I think is completely dumb for obvious reasons. He's the only person who I've kept on the show long term, and he gets invited back every episode, so I think it's sort of funny, frankly, to put that forward. At the core of this whole thing, you will find that Jeremiah is soft, that his sensibilities and his feelings got hurt because of things that were said by people on podcasts, and that he decided to hold grudges against those people, which he admits, and so he gets to openly attack those people because he feels like it, and that's fine. He can do that, and he can screech and whine to his heart's content. He believes he's been blackballed and blacklisted in the libertarian movement, but the reality is no one wants to work with him because of what he looks like on Twitter, what his feed looks like, what he's constantly saying about people in the liberty movement. People don't trust people who are snakes. And snakes are the type of people who put out private communications, who call men coward behind a keyboard, who create hour-and-a-half-long streams basically saying that I don't understand comedy, and what if these people are serious and not actually joking? Wham! I'm sorry that your world is so small that you can worry about these things. I'm sorry that you have nothing better to do with your time than worry about what other men are doing and saying. I also find it sad that you had to grovel on Twitter to get onto somebody else's show. I find that to be a bit depressing in general. I've never been on really any giant political platforms. You don't see me crying about it on Twitter and publishing DMs that I sent to people 6 months ago, because that's gay shit. Jeremiah is a perfect example of somebody who talks a lot with no substance. Somebody who doesn't understand the people that he's critiquing. Somebody who doesn't realize the world that they live in. Somebody who operates outside of reality. Furthermore, I think the way he went about this whole thing shows exactly why people don't want to work with him in the libertarian space, and it shows exactly the type of person you'll be dealing with if you decide to. The type of person that is willing to publish private communications, the type of person that's willing to lie to make themselves look better, the type of person who will twist the truth to make things better for themselves or the people that they're friends with. Those are the people you'll be dealing with. So keep that in mind. In general, I could have went about this a completely different way. I could have edited clips of his stream, made fun of everybody on there, and done a whole comedic thing. But I actually decided this was better. I'll just give you my straight-up opinion talking to the camera. This is something I used to do all the time on the internet, and I just sort of stopped. But I think this sort of covers everything that I wanted to go over. Basically, this guy's a joker, and the people that he had on stream, minus Kareem, were too. None of them are people that I'm really interested in communicating with or talking to. They're not people who I respect or who have any form of knowledge that I don't, or haven't read the same books, or haven't done the same things. It's all the same shit. Anyway, I think that about covers this whole shit show. I just kind of wanted to put this out there, give you guys an idea of what actually went on, some context, a little bit about who I am and why I find all this so laughable, and also just like the fact that this person's opinion does not matter whatsoever. We're talking about a stream that'll get less than 50 views or so. We're talking about a person who gets no responses on Twitter yet has, you know, tons of followers. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to go ahead and close it out there. I think I've covered all there is to cover about this horse shit. Needless to say, Jeremiah is not going to be being seen on the channel anymore. Kareem will be here lots, obviously. You'll see him next show. And I'm sure we will talk a little bit more about this then. I believe the next show is with Jacob from Rise to Liberty, I believe. I'm not sure. I've got to look at my schedule again. That is rough. And then I'm going to be in D.C. here for the Libertarian Party National Convention. So if you see me there, come say hi. I'd love to meet as many of you guys as I can. Ask me about Joe Vogler. Peace.